Okay. Okay. Breathe. Last round was a bit of a doozy there, and I almost lost my temper. But we are back on the scoreboard here. Still 2 matches left in the tournament, and still 2 matches that I absolutely need to win with my mono green deck. Now I'm up against Nico Bohny of Switzerland, who used to be a pro player and has kind of gotten back into the game recently. Though that he is very good, or at least like used to be very good. I assume he still is because he's still keeping up with the game. Him and I have the thing in common that we're both team world champions. So that's pretty cool. He won with Switzerland in. Oh nah, I felt like I was bragging so much of my MCG tournament knowledge, but I actually don't know which year it was. Somewhere in the 2000s. That's broad enough. Anyhow, this is this mono white aggro deck that I'm up against, and I assume that most of you watching this video know what this deck is about, so I'm not really gonna discuss it much. But I will just notice that there is this this notion in the community that mono white beats mono green, and the data backs that up. The reason why I chose to play mono green in this tournament was that we playtested this matchup quite a bit and came to the conclusion that it was at worst 50-50, if not slightly a favorite for mono green. The thing is that it comes down to the die roll a lot, especially game 1 is very often dictated by the die roll. And then it's about having good plans when you're on the draw in the pole sport games, because if you lose game 1, you really need to win really need to win your pole sport game on the draw. And I think that mono green has an easier time winning on the draw than mono white does, if you have the right sideboard plans, which we did spend a lot of time developing and figuring out exactly what we were going to do. So I do think with the Devouring Tendrils and the Tadura Blight Blades, you can actually set yourself up in a spot where you're able to stabilize on the draw and come back over the top, especially with the help of Chariot, a card that mono white has a pretty hard time answering. So that said, yeah, as I said, I think it's like, maybe 50-50. I will note that there's 2 Redain in this list. That's one of the ways that mono white can win on a play. Which is like when I'm on the draw post board, right? Like that's when mono white is on the play. And that's something that can make it harder for me to actually win those games. And I'll also note that there is the 2 Valor Stance and the 4 Brutal Cathar in the main deck. Alongside, I guess, 2 Portable Hold, which are not as good. But especially Valor Stance is very good against mono green. Can either stop a fight spell or kill one of my big things. Both things are very relevant. And that is definitely something to look out for. Other than that, it is fairly stock. And yeah, let's just get the... Oh, I also noticed that there's a Circle of Confinement alongside 2 more Portable Holes, which I actually think the Circle of Confinement is a pretty smart bet, because the reason I don't think Portable Hole is great against mono green, still fine, but is that a lot of the like really threatening cards are like stuff like Olgo's Troll, which Portable Hole doesn't hit, but the fact that Circle of Confinement does makes it a lot better. So that's just worth noting. So yeah, let's get into the game here and see what Nico could do. Alright, we lost the die roll. I was really hoping to win that one. I mean, I already got my 1 die roll out of this tournament, so like maybe that's all I deserve. In the standard portion at least. Anyway, it's gonna keep this hand with, a fine curve, obviously missing a 2-drop, but we should be okay here. Not really expecting to win this game, but we're gonna try our best. At least we have the Chariot, and that's one of the most important cards in the mirror. So I think Nico is mulliganing here. And that's what we're waiting for. Trying to figure out what to put on bottom. Yeah. Oh, it's a 5-card hand. Now, it's a lot more likely that I'll win. I will notice, actually, this is the first time I noticed that Nico mulligans to 5 this game. I didn't notice it when I was playing it, and I didn't notice it on my first look through. So, anyway, there's actually something interesting here, is that, normally you just go left the Hydra, Ascendant Pack Leader, right? The obvious line. Then, as I keep saying, you have to think about everything, because whenever there is an actual option, you don't know which time the obvious line is the correct one and which time it isn't. And now, the deal breaker here is that I drew a Blizzard Brawl. Now, if I go turn 1 there of the Hydra, that means I won't have the opportunity to play my Blizzard Brawl on turn 3 if I wanted to or if I need to. Because I will only have 2 Snowlands on turn 3. However, if I play a Snow-covered Forest now, then I risk that my Lair of the Hydra will come into play tapped later, which could get in the way of playing my Chariot. So what do you weigh more? Well, since I have a 3-drop already, that means I'm less likely to cast Blizzard Brawl, which would hint me towards playing the Snow-covered Forest, or sorry, playing the Lair out is best now. So that I can, if I don't draw another land, I can still make sure I can play my Chariot on turn 4. I do think there's a little twist here, which is that I only have one other layer in my deck. Oh, sorry, I don't have any other layers in my deck. I only have 1 in total. So, if I just play a forest now, there's no way to actually punish me for just playing out the layer next turn. Because if I draw a Mammoth, I'm not going to play it as a land anyway. And there's no other layer to draw, which would be the real punish for waiting on my layer. So actually what I think I'm supposed to do is just play out the forest here, and then you'll see me consider the options here. The thing I'm supposed to do here is play the Snow-covered Forest now, and then I basically get to delay my decision for 1 turn. But it's very funny, like, play against the Monograin player, and they're like really tanking what land drop to play. And most of the time it's not gonna matter. But then, like, this is a really high stakes event. And what if that one time that it does matter is right now? I better make sure I get those percentages right. Anyway, I'm gonna delay my decision of whether or not to play Lair. As maybe I draw something that changes it. For instance, if I draw another Snow-covered Forest, I think I'm more likely to play out the Blizzard, to play out the Lair. Anyway, my opponent attacks here, and I just happily take the trade. You really want to trade for that 1-drop, and no 2-drop either. Alright, that's really good for me. Even though I don't draw a 2-drop, that's totally fine. The Spellbinder here is gonna hurt quite a bit. It takes away my old control. And, alright, another Blizzard Brawl is drawn. Sadly don't have an option now, but that's okay. Second Spellbinder. It's actually quite threatening here. It also takes away my Chariot, which is, yeah, not really what I want to have happen. I was really banking on playing that Chariot next turn. So now we're really gonna have to rely on these double Blizzard Brawls to kind of catch us back up here. And so now, so I draw a Mammoth here, and I actually have a few options. Obviously, I can just play my Odyssey and bash. I can play my Mammoth and Blizzard Brawl one of the Spellbinders, or I can animate my Lair for X = 1, and then Blizzard Brawl both the Spellbinders. Which is definitely like a less mana efficient use of my time, because I don't develop my board as I do it, but it also makes sure that I take absolutely no damage. In the end, I decide that it's better for me to be a little bit more proactive and get into damage right now. It also, because if I play Mammoth and fight now, I don't get the opportunity to play the Mammoth as a land, which I might want to do since I have the 6-mana Chariot, which is definitely going to be my win condition here. So I decided to just go with the Oddity, and that I can take the damage from these Spellbinders. I wonder if there's an argument for not attacking for 4 with the Oddity, based on my opponent having mulliganed a lot and has this Faceless Haven. Because I don't really want to take 10 damage next turn. But honestly, I also think I'm okay if that happens. Because I can take 10 down to 7, and then next turn I can go, like maybe I draw a land and I go like fight Mammoth. And it's like for 6. And that puts me ahead on the board by quite a lot. Because my opponent would not have developed. So basically just playing out those scenarios in your head can be a good idea to just envision what would happen if you do one play or another. Anyways, I'm getting in for 4 here, and it's okay. Intrepid Adversary means we're on quite a bit of duress here in the air. Really happy that I have these Blizzard Brawls, and Chariot is a good draw. So I could play Chariot and Mammoth here, which definitely locks up the ground. The issue is that like there's 8 points in the air and I'm at 9. So another Adversary or the Paladin class or the Luminarch Aspirant, which is obviously pre-nerf in this version. I mean, this is standard, so it's not even going to be nerfed in regular standard. But all of those things would kill me here, and it would be really embarrassing to lose that game from this point. Not that embarrassment should be an argument for making a play over another. But basically I decide that here, if I just fight both the Spellbinders here and hold my Odyssey back, things can't really go that wrong. Even if my opponent has like a Brutal Cathar here, they only get in for 4. I can trade with Faces Haven if that gets attacked with. And then I can try and knock down the ground with a Seeker's Chariot. So ultimately, I feel pretty good about this spot now. Definitely the opponent being on 2 fewer cards has helped. And no 2-drop crucially. That if there was a 2-drop here, I think I would be under too much pressure to be able to come back. With my draw where I had some inefficient turns, right? I also had like... Yeah, I skipped turn 2 and 3, and then turn 5, I only spent 2 mana. So, definitely both of us not having the best draws here, but this Chariot here is gonna shore everything up. Like, now the ground is fully stable. Opponent doesn't really have a good attack anymore. And I already dealt with 2 of the flyers, which are basically the thing that could win the game from here. As you can see, I'm playing with the Bat Pet a little bit. We do animate a Faces Haven, which makes sense. I have a few options for... I could trade the Chariot so that when I play my Chariot from exile, you know what, the Legend rule doesn't apply. But then again, it might just be better for me to just trade with Oddity. And then if I don't draw a land, for instance, like that's just better for me because I get the Chariot attack. So I'm gonna do it like that, and... Alright, well, I don't draw the land, but I draw a 3rd Chariot, which is pretty nice. So I'm just gonna load up this Chariot. My opponent has a pretty nice double block here of Hopeful Initiate and Usher, which I would be very happy to just trade my Chariot for one of these 1-drops, and then play my second one. My opponent doesn't bite, though, so I just, like, look over the board, make sure that, like, even a Brutal Cathar or anything doesn't put me in a bad spot. And it doesn't, because the cat token can still trade with the adversary. So yeah, opponent still doesn't have a good attack, but takes it anyway. So, well, I mean, I'm just gonna make my blocks here. There's no really tricks here. I mean, you could use a Valorous Stance, but that doesn't really affect anything. And I don't know if my opponent thought that they could use Hopeful Initiate to remove a counter from the Interpret adversary to kill the Chariot. But yeah, that definitely didn't work. Worth noting that this is well past midnight in Europe at this point, so you know, no wonder if Nico might just have made a blunder there. And also, it's a really high pressure tournament. Anyway, I'm very quickly sideboarding because I know exactly what I want to do in the matchup, which is definitely not taking out Blizzard Brawl. So I'm gonna bring in a lot of removal spells like the Violent Tendrils and Inscriptions, and the Blight Blades, which are both good to trade with for 1-drops and other early creatures, even if they're buffed up by stuff like Luminarch Aspirant. But Blight Blade is also a really good enabler for my fight spells, especially Devouring Tendrils, as it has Death Touch, so you can fight anything for just 1 mana. It's very easy to keep in play as well in that regard. And then I'm also gonna board in some Briarbridge trackers. We tried to figure out like which big thing you want against mono white. We tried actually to board in Brennan 7 when you had those in the sideboard, and then realized that no, actually what we wanted was just a Briarbridge tracker, like something that cost, you know, cheap enough that it could be played and be relevant, but would help you grind a little bit in the longer games. And the fact that it has Vigilance, the 3 toughness is really good, it doesn't get hit by Portable Hole, it does a lot of like small things that matter a lot. And because your game plan is like very, you know, trade-off card based with the Blight Blades, and even keeping in a few pack leaders just to have like more things to trade with in an efficient manner. You're just trying to trade, and then the fact that you're up a card because you're on the draw, and the fact that like Tracker puts you up a card, and so on. The fact that Chariot can, you know, put you up a massive amount of cards. That's essentially what you want to try and do to win the matchup here. Right, so let's see this game. We're gonna be on the draw again here. But really happy to have taken game 1, by the way. I mean, I can't iterate that enough. I mean, obviously, you know, Nico mulligan to 5, which definitely helped him win. We have a really nice draw here as well. We can have some plays and a Chariot, so that's all I really want. Now it's actually kind of an interesting decision. Do you pick Blight Blade or Pack Leader here? I think I end up on Pack Leader, thinking that I can trade that off for the Initiate, and then my Blight Blade will be able to trade off for something larger later. But I'm not sure that actually makes that much sense. Anyway, it gets hit by the portable hole because the Blightblade is worse as an attacker as well. Anyway, now drew a Sculptor of Winter. So I was planning to play Blightblade and Mammoth here, but now that I drew Sculptor, I would rather set up for the turn 3 Chariot. But okay, well, Spellbinder means that that's just not going to happen here. So I assume that the Chariot is going to get taken, and yeah, that's what happens. So we don't get the chance of drawing an untapped land. And okay, well, we didn't draw an untapped land. We drew a Lair of the Hydra. So now our turn is still going to be fairly efficient. I mean, this Faceless Haven is really like getting in the way. But the fact that Sculptor of Winter is a snow permanent means that we get to fight the Spellbinder there. And now we still have the Blightblade to trade with Initiate, so we're not too far behind. And yeah, next turn we can like either play Ogre's Troll or we can play like Mammoth plus maybe if you draw Cheap Spell. Like we do have some options. Most likely I'm gonna look to just play the Troll and play the Mammoth as a land so that I can work myself towards the Chariot. Alright, but here's a Maul of the Skyclaves. So Maul really changes the texture of this game now. Because now it's a race. Now I really need to make sure that I get in my damage and is fast. So I do actually have an option here. And I'm gonna pause a little bit because I think there's actually some layers to this tiny decision for 1 point of damage, which could matter. It really could matter. The thing is that I'm thinking about, obviously like my Blightblade can't block the Initiate with Maul on it, but it can block this Faceless Haven. My opponent only has 2 cards left in hand. It is not inconceivable that my opponent wants to just activate Faceless Haven and attack with it this turn to put a count on the Initiate. So that Initiate will be a 4-turn clock in the air. I think that's very important, right? Because that, you know, basically like shaving off a point of the clock. So if my opponent's hand is like, you know, just some planes and maybe like a portable hole or I don't know. I mean, I guess they don't have a 1-drop here because they would have played it. But it is possible that the opponent would want to attack with the Faceless Haven next turn. Then I would make sure that I can just trade my Blightblade for it. And I'm also thinking that since all the damage I'm dealing here looks to be even, there's no point in getting in for 1 damage, is part of my reasoning. I think this line of thinking is very good to consider, but wrong to conclude on. So it's always good to think about these things, but make sure that your reasonings are solid. The thing about like the odd and even numbers doesn't really matter at this point. I don't have like a clear face-up clock. My opponent is still 20 life. We're not like, you know, I don't know exactly how my damage is gonna add up to 20. And for instance, if this Blightblade attacks twice, all of a sudden that turns into an even number again. So it's not like my opponent's always guaranteed to be at an even life total. That's just not the case. And also like the Ogre of Troll has Trample. What if my opponent blocks it with something that has 3 toughness? Then like that's another odd point of damage. So I think that part of the reasoning doesn't make sense. The other part of the reasoning that doesn't make sense is that my Ogre of Troll can just block this Faceless Haven. And I was thinking originally that I would not want to block with my Troll because I needed to attack with. But if I block with the Troll, I get to play my Chariot. So that's not even that bad. And I get to activate my Faceless Haven as well. I guess the real reason here is if my opponent has like Plains Valorous stance in hand, they will be able to animate the Haven, attack and kill the Troll and get in for 8 damage, which would actually put me in a lot of trouble. So honestly, maybe that is worth playing around. I think like for all the arguments I've made so far, that is the one that makes the most sense for not attacking here. And yeah, actually I think that's reasonable enough that maybe it makes sense. As a spoiler alert, I've really been scouring over this game to try and figure out how I could have done things differently. And a point of life on this turn will end up matter in some scenarios. So yeah, just keep that in mind, that 1 point of damage. I decided not to attack here, to play around the Faceless Haven attack with Valor Stance. Yeah, basically just like, you know, land Valor Stance is... If my opponent has that, actually the animate Faceless Haven line is very clear. So they do draw a portable hole. And Athalia. So like now my Chariot dreams are definitely just not happening. Anyway, I draw Tracker here, so now I can double spell. Obviously you can't attack with Blightblade into the Thalia, but yeah, we can get our Bribery Striker down, and another Blight Blade. The Blight Blades look very embarrassing now against First Strikers and Maul. That's, you know, their weakest spot, basically, in this matchup. And I think possibly a reason why I should have played Blight Blade on turn 1 to try and trade with or get hit by Portable Hole, rather than my Pack Leader, which would be able to get in more damage in the long run. Anyway, a second Initiate here, and not much else. And alright, so we're down to 10 here. And that means that now, you know, this clock is very real. We really have to consider, like, how are we gonna race this? I'm thinking, as I'm playing this match, that I need to draw a removal spell in order to swing this race at some point. So I'm hoping that the clue for my tracker will help me get there. I think at this point I should basically abandon the Chariot as a winning line, because it's just too slow to get online against the Mortal of the Skyclaves. Because it's like both because it's 7 mana and it takes a turn for it to even provide pressure, and it doesn't do anything against flying. So I really have to like work with what's on board. I think a big handicap that I have right here is that I cannot activate my Faceless Haven because I have 2 non-snow lands. Hopefully the Sculptor of Winter could help here. Anyway, I do have a pretty good attack here of just 8, which it does get me pretty close to lethal, so maybe we can eke something out, especially if I hit a removal spell. Because my opponent still needs 3 attacks to kill me, no matter how you line this up. Oh, but there's a Valor stance. Alright, well, yeah, that does mean that I get extra mana, and actually with the Sculptor of Winter, all of a sudden the Chariot comes into play again. Now, I still have the option. Do I crack my clue here? Because if I do, you know, maybe I can hit a 3-drop, like another Old Ghost Troll. That would be better. If I hit a land, I can... Actually, land doesn't change anything. I still won't be able to make the token. And I think if I crack my clue and I brick, I'm probably more likely to just make the token than to play the Sculptor of Winter. Making a token also means that this Bribery Tracker will keep its buff here. However, I decided that if I just make a Sculptor of Winter here, I can just delay this decision based on what my opponent does. So I don't get the upside of drawing something good right now, but I could either make an Old Ghost Troll token end of turn, or I could crack my clue, depending on what my opponent does. And specifically, if they attack for 3 and then equip the Maul to Thalia, which would be a pretty good line there, then I'm less interested in making the troll and more interested in trying to find removal spell. So I decided to play a Sculptor here. And man, I should really get better at like resuming the video mid-speech so that it catches up with my thought process that you're watching live. Me just sitting there and thinking. Anyhow. Also worth noting that Nico is now in top deck mode, so everything is really on the board here. And I just need to make sure that I can get in some extra damage. Alright, just a land here. That's really nice. It does mean that he'll guarantee just attack with the Initiate and equip to Thalia here. I think he's considering if he should attack with the Faceless Haven too, instead of equipping to Thalia, because again, that puts a count on Initiate. But the fact that I have Blight Blades that block the Haven so well, and the fact that it doesn't actually change the clock means that, yeah, this is definitely the line. So, since I already made up my mind, if he's gonna equip to the Thalia, then I'm gonna crack my clue. I'm just doing that right away. Not actually considering another possible option. See, something I could do here, right? Because I'm thinking, well, the only way I win this race now is because I can't attack next turn anyway. The only way I win this race is if I draw a removal spell. So I need to maximize my chances of doing that by cracking the clue right now. But if I just make a troll token here, there's actually possibly a line where I can just win in 2 swings, because I need to win in 2 attacks. And if I don't find a removal spell and I don't get to attack next turn, then winning everything in 1 attack is going to be very hard against potential jump blockers and so on. So what I should be doing here is pausing and thinking, how would the game play out multiple turns ahead here? If I make a troll token and this Thalia is a 4/3, how would my attack look? Well, I attack with everything. My opponent blocks the Thalia, and they take 8 damage. Actually, yeah, because I will still have the clue token left over to pump up the Bribage tracker. So that actually put them in range where maybe I could win in 2 swings. The thing is that they can still chump block with the Hopeful Initiate, which probably puts them out of range. And it depends a lot on what I draw. You also have to consider though, actually, if I do make an all-out attack, even if I draw a creature here, they are probably just gonna block my Bribage tracker instead, and not block with the Hopeful Initiate. Because then I don't have this Vigilance blocker, and so they would take 8 damage again, go to 4, and then on their turn, you know, the Maul is equipped to Thalia, they animate Faceless Haven, attack with everything, put a counter on each Hopeful Initiate, and if I just have 1 blocker from either a creature I draw or this Lair of the Hydra, I can block the Faceless Haven, but I still take 2 + 2 + 4 and die. So actually that doesn't work. I have to leap back another blocker. So an all-out attack would mean attacking with everything but 1 Blightblade. And then I only put them to 5, and they can still jump block with this Initiate, which they're more likely to do if I don't attack with this Blightblade. So, not sure that actually gives me more of a chance. But the beautiful thing is here is that I can actually map this all out in multiple steps, especially since next turn, right? Like, if I can also count my attack, like not just my attack like as I untap for my next turn here, but also the turn after. Because I don't know how many blockers, I do know how many blockers my opponent has. They have no cards in hand. If they draw a land, the Faceless Haven will be a blocker. If they draw a creature, that creature will be a blocker. No matter what they draw, it doesn't change the amount of blockers they have available. And I know they will attack with Thalia and put me to 3, so I know that the turn after, they will have 3 blockers for sure. So you can actually map it all out. But let's say I draw, I don't know, another Sculptor of Winter. As my draw for the turn. And I attack with, I attack here and put like for 7 in total, where they block my Troll, put them down to 5. I play my Sculptor of Winter, and I have 2 blockers left over, as I need to in order to survive. Though as I said, they probably jump block the Initiate if I leave back a Blightblade. So yeah, that's the thing, right? If they jump block with Initiate, they only take 3 damage and go to 9. And then I basically just gave up a Troll token to deal them 3 damage and kill a Hopeful Initiate. That might still be okay. But then, work with me here because I'm really like into hypotheticals as I'm imagining what the board would look like. But I could still add up that damage, right? Then they attack me down to 3, play a blocker or a land, doesn't matter. They would have 2 blockers left because they jump block with the Initiate. And maybe I draw a land. I load up my Lair of the Hydra as a 2/2. So I have like my Sculptor of Winter or whatever creature it is. Like it doesn't have to be specifics, but you're just thinking any creature you can cast. And it's okay to think in these terms because sometimes you need to get a little bit lucky, right? If I draw a land for my next turn, I can just crack the clue then. And then if I draw any removal spell, I would be able to cast it still because the land gives me that mana. So you can actually think that like, well, you know, your deck is mostly like lands, creatures, and removal spells. And there are not very many creatures that you can't cast. You wouldn't be able to cast Chariot because this land will be gone, so you only have access to 4 mana and there's a Thalia in play. And you wouldn't be able to cast Old Troll because you actually don't have a green source to untap with Sculptor of Winter if I make a Troll token. So you can just think, well, okay, ignoring that I draw one of those cards that are uncastable, which would be the worst case scenario, I actually am still in a fine spot. Even if I draw a land, I can just crack the clue then. And it's kind of the same thing. But if I don't make the Troll now, I rob myself of the option to be able to attack with it. And also, if I draw a removal spell off my clue, you know, if there is a removal spell as the second card from the top, essentially, that would be better for me if I have a Troll token in play to make my attack stronger. So I think that all the logic here of cracking my clue end of turn just doesn't make sense. I'm not gonna play my Chariot. It doesn't affect the game enough in any way. And I'm not gonna, and I'm not really gonna need this land in order to like interact with my opponent if that's what I draw. So really, what I should be doing here is just make the Troll token. Now, as I underlined, you know, they're gonna be at like 9 life, and I would, you know, maybe have like a Sculptor of Winter and this Lair of the Hydra as a 2/2. So I would have a bunch of 2-power things, right? Maybe I still have the clue, who knows, for the Ravage Tracker. And they have 2 blockers, so they just block like my Tracker, my 1 Sculptor, and then they take 6 damage in total for the rest of my creatures. Like 2 Blight Blades and my Lair and my, you know, whatever creature I draw. Maybe that's the one they jump block, who knows. But it all adds up to like 6 damage in total, where I would have them at 9 at that point. So I can't actually kill them that way. It is worth noting, however, 2 things. If I play my Blight Blade on turn 1 this game, because remember turn 1 I had the decision whether or not to play Blight Blade or Ascendant Pack Leader. If I play Blight Blade, I played Ascendant Pack Leader and it got hit by Portable Hole. If I play my Blight Blade, with the logic that that's the one I want to trade off, because Pack Leader is the better attacker in case I need to race. Which was not something that really went through my mind, but something that probably should have gone through my mind. Then now, you know, then a couple turns later, when I didn't attack with my Blight Blade, because my opponent, you know, had the Maul and Hopeful Initiate and could animate the Faces Haven. You remember that turn, right, where I said 1 point of damage? Well, there would have been 2 points of damage with the Pack Leader. So my opponent would have been at 10 life now. And then, as I make this attack, it's also more damage from the Pack Leader. And all of a sudden, it actually adds up to me being able to attack for lethal in 2 turns, if I also crack this, like, make this troll now. So there's like a series of events that could actually lead me to win this game. You could argue that like some of them are maybe not the optimal choices, because I'm not really sure about the turn 1, for instance. I think that's a very close decision, right? And it's only because the way things played out that one option ended up being better than the other. But regardless, it's just worth noting that that's something you could do. Anyway, I draw my card here. It's a Mammoth and a land. Okay, no removal spells in sight. How are we setting up for lethal here? So I'm really racking my brain here, and like I'm thinking, you know, what happens if I attack with Faces Haven and everything else? Is that gonna be good enough? Do I need to like look out for lethal? Should I play my Chariot and just hope to draw a removal spell next turn? Can I win if I don't draw a removal spell, essentially? Is there any I think I'm not really thinking to... I'm starting, at this point, you know, as the timer's moving, I'm starting to, like, line up my attacks. I'm thinking, yeah, what if I just animate my Faces Haven here? Attack with everything. Would that be good? Well, they're gonna block Thalia and Faces Haven, so that's not that good. So I probably need to, like, hold back my Sculptor of Winter, so I can make a Troll token. But I still can't attack with everything, because, you know, I'm probably dying on the backswing. And so all in all, my attack doesn't actually look that good. And yeah, I'm also not sure, like, you know, do I make my Troll token or do I just play Mammoth and like line up to attack with the Haven next turn? And there's a whole lot of things here that are going on in my mind. And as the timer is ticking out, I don't manage to make a decision in time. And then I panic, and then this is what happens. I just skipped the turn. So yeah, you saw me explain a lot of the things like end of turn, which is definitely part of it, right? You only have so much time on your turn. So I could have taken some of the time on the end step thinking about it instead of like just immediately cracking the clue. I could just spend some time getting more of an overview of what could happen. And then as I draw my cards and I gain more info, I can continue that thought process. For instance, I would have realized something about, oh, white, they have lethal if I don't have 2 blockers left. So I would already know that that's something I need to take into account. Anyway, I don't draw a removal spell this turn either, and we are done for here. Interesting game, though, to analyze, because as I said, I think there are ways that I win this, even despite the Maul of the Skyclaves and not drawing removal spell all game. So, yeah, that's just worth noting. Anyhow, the timer's gonna end here as I'm like racking my brain for if there's any way I have lethal. Actually at this point I'm not really thinking about lethal. I'm just thinking about like, wait, what could have happened? As I sometimes do. It's not really super healthy to do in tournament settings, but I'm just thinking about like, what should I have done on the turn I ran out of time? Would I have had a way to win? Anyways, I've really spent a lot of time working over that game, seeing different scenarios. At some points I thought I had lethal when I really didn't, and then, you know, I had to go down other trees where my opponent blocks differently, and then that's not lethal, and so on. It's like really this like big web of alternate possibilities. Anyhow, we're boarding to be on the play now. And on the play, I no longer want to just trade cards efficiently as I did when I was on the draw. I still want to have some of the Blight Blades in my deck as ways to just be able to fight well. I think, wait, hold on. Actually, yeah, that is what I want to do. And I don't need the Pack Leaders anymore, because the Pack Leader is not that impressive as a creature in this matchup, especially since I don't have any 4-drops other than the Chariot. So for the most part, they stay at 2-1 throughout the game. And that's just not a good attacker, so I don't really need them. Alright, I don't actually have the Blight Blades on the play. I don't really need them as an attacker. Because they're, I don't need them as a blocker because I'm on the draw. So there's not as much pressure for me to use my turn 1 for anything proactive. So instead, I don't bother with any of my 1-drops because I don't want to trade efficiently. I want to play things that go over the top of my opponent. I want to, you know, utilize stuff like Snakeskin Veil, where my opponent's going to have a lot of removal spells, and I can like blow them out with that and keep up the tempo. It's a lot harder for me to use Snakeskin Veil when I'm on the draw, because I can't really, for instance, like, hold my 2-drop for an extra turn in order to be able to play it with protection up, because I have to play my things out on curve. And I have to play my removal spells as soon as they're available, and I really don't have much mana left to spare. But on the play, you have a bit more mana left to spare, and you just don't really want your opponent's tools for catching back up on the draw, which are their removal spells. You don't want those to hit. So, boarding in Snakeskin Veils, still keeping all the removal spells. I'm boarding in Ranger class back in, because it's just a better tool for me to go over the top of my opponent's doing, and to keep the pressure rolling. And I've actually had multiple games in testing where the third mode of Ranger class was good in the mono white matchup. And the second mode definitely like enables you to attack better in some spots. I think that on the draw it's just too slow, and you run the risk of them having Thalia, and you can't even play it on turn 2. So I don't think you can afford to have it in your deck on the draw, but on the play I think it's fine. And I'm gonna make another small change here, which to realize that my opponent has a lot of exile removal in the form of like both the enchantment, like the Seal of Confinement, whatever it's called, and as well as the 1 Ball of the Skyclaves, which would also be very nice to kill. So I'm boarding in my Outland Liberator instead of a Ranger class. That's a totally fine thing to do. It's just gonna depend a lot on their list whether or not that's worth doing. Anyway, we're gonna be in the play here, and very unassuming hand. It looks like I'm gonna flood very easily, which I definitely could, but I also think that like just being able to hit your land drops and curve out is very important and rewarded. Just drawing a Chariot off the top, and now my hand is great. Let's see if there's an answer to the Sculptor of Winter. There is. Alright, it's gone. Now I draw another land here, and I could play a Sculptor again, but since I know my next turn is going to be Chariot no matter what, I'm just going to run out the Pack Leader here, just get in some better attacks here. And also, my opponent could very easily have Elite Spellbinder this turn, and if they do and take away my Chariot, I'd rather just have the better attacker, essentially. Though actually I think there's a lot of arguments for just going Sculptor here again. Possibly I should have just done that. Anyway, I draw another land, but hopefully like getting to just resolve Chariot on an empty board should be good enough. And my opponent missed their land drop, so here's a Numenor Aspirant, which, yeah, I mean, you know, it does things. Like it puts, no, it puts counters on things, but I get to like play my Sculptor here. Oh, actually, yeah, this is what I get to do. I get to attack with my Faces Haven and my Chariot, and then play Sculptor Winter post-combat, which is just so much pressure on this turn. And actually a very efficient turn. So Faces Haven and Chariot really showing that like it doesn't actually matter if you flood out a little bit, because those cards are just so powerful that can pull you out of it, especially if your opponent's stuck on lands here. So opponent's gonna play just a sad Interpret Adversary without Kicker. They can put a counter on it with Adversary, so now this can trade with Chariot, but I don't actually care. Drawing another land here, not great, but I don't think I really need it, because I get to do this cool play where you crew with Faces Haven, and then you untap it with the Sculptor of Winter. So that way, essentially, your Chariot has crew 2 in this scenario. Get to copy my cat token. And yeah, I mean, they get to trade for Chariot, but they don't really have another good block here, and they're gonna end up at 6 life at the end of turn, where I'm just so far ahead on board here. So I'm feeling really good about this. That's like, you know, these two games here, like game 2 and 3, really show like why, you know, the die roll is quite important in the matchup. And obviously also like hitting your land drops definitely matters. Anyway, pretty ecstatic to get out against Mono White there. And some very interesting games. Like, I definitely think that my opponent got a bit unlucky, right? You know, the multi 5 and the missed land drop and so on. And definitely if they had like hit lands, they probably could have punished me for having so many lands. They would have been able to like grind out of it. But it's not for sure that it would have played out like super well for them. And regardless, in the end here, do come out as the victor. There's a lot of analysis going on in this game here, or in this match in total. I'm still like, that game 2 was just super interesting and so much to take away from it. Game 3, kind of a slaughter. We definitely take those. Like, at this point in the tournament, that's like, you know, screw interesting games. Screw like, you know, good and compelling and exciting matches. You just want to break, right? Because you've just been like on such a high intensity level the entire day. You've been playing, you know, some very difficult matches and had to make some, you know, some close calls in some ways and like do some deep analysis in others, and you just spent. And you're just hoping that you don't have to do that anymore. So getting a match like this, where like the game 3 just ends up being kind of free for you, where you don't have many decisions, like that's just exactly what you want. And I'm so thankful that I got that here. And I need to do this once more though. The pressure is still on. I did narrow it down from having to win 3 matches in a row to now only having to win 1 match. But there's still a lot of pressure, right? Because if I don't win that 1 match, this next one here, then all the other wins, everything, was just like for nothing. Not for actual nothing, because I'll still have some prize money, but I won't get that invite for sure, and that's exactly what I'm after. So, still some high pressure magic coming in this last round here. See you then.